create revenue for the district for different programs that you might like to see on the school sites, at existing school sites. That's what we'd like to talk about today. So that's it. I'm not going to go into much more. I want you all to respect your time and have you all say a few things. I want to have Laura come on up and share some thoughts with you as well, or stay there, whatever you'd like to do. I like to be among the people. Anyway, thank you all for being here. Appreciate it.
Well, Andrew knows I'm not a big public speaker, so for me, this is the discovery phase of a project that may possibly go down the line that takes many, many years. So really the committee input, study sessions, town halls, all of that is going to need to occur. All the input needs to come in before anything is even brought to the board for consideration. So for me, this is a way for us to look at the property that we own, and are we using it as efficiently as we can? You know, we have great programs here in Lakeside, and some of our programs are outgrowing their space, some of our programs are underutilizing our space. How can we, use everything more efficiently? And so for me, this is a way for us to kind of start and kind of look at what are your big dreams for the district, and the ideas that come with them. I have dreams, I know you have dreams, and I'm kind of really interested to see what everybody's are and where we can move forward and grow and continue to be the amazing district that we are.
Great. I'll turn it over to you all.
Great. Hey, good morning, everybody. My name's Barry Jantz. We're not going to record. It's very casual, it's informal. I know you. Okay, you are recording, but I'm not going to speak into the mic. Let's say that. You can all hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I know you have questions already. Before we even start. So Scott, when we get to Scott, who's Scott Barnett, he's a consultant advisor on this issue. He's going to get into detail and flesh out what we're even talking about here. And I think that's really going to help you, and that will be able to formulate the questions you might want to ask to get clarity and the input you have. And that's the important thing today, because I think there's a unique opportunity here. By background, again, it's Barry Jantz. By background, I retired a couple years ago as CEO of the East County Public Hospital District, that's Grossmont Healthcare District. It's connected to something called Sharp Grossmont Hospital. You've probably heard of that. And I've been doing some strategic planning, meeting facilitation, executive coaching, some workforce development stuff since then. So let's just say I retired from someplace. I didn't really retire. And my wife says, I thought you were going to retire. So, but anyway, I'm here today. Why am I here? I'm here because I think you have a unique opportunity. Scott's going to get into that. I was asked to help, and I think I could help with this. And the other reason is because I heard there are going to be donut holes. And the last reason is because Coffee Queens is right across the street, and I knew that it would make for a great stop on the way here. So, so we're going to get started. The process, again, it's intended as informal. It's not, we're recording it, I guess, but it's not an official board meeting, correct? We're not even going to make you come up here and speak into a mic or anything. I'm going to go out to you. I'm going to ask you if you have comments and questions to speak loudly so the recording can catch it, and we'll move ahead. We've got till 9:30. We'll see how that goes. I'd like to encourage you, if you don't, let's put it this way. Written comments are just as essential to this process as verbal comments. So I'm not trying to keep you from saying anything. It's just that some of you may be more comfortable writing your comments down. Don't think that means any less to this process, because everything's being captured, and the board members and staff are going to be presented all of the comments, correct? So is there anything I've missed, Scott and Andrew, before I roll into you, Scott? Okay, and what's really nice, I love when we can get started in a meeting and it's 5 after 8 or 7 after 8, and it says the consultant is going to start his presentation is 8:15, which means we're 10 minutes ahead of schedule already. So we're going to have lots of time for public comment. So thank you again, everybody, for being here. And I'll turn it over to Scott Barnett, and he can provide some needed clarity right now that I'm sure you all need.
Thank you, Barry. My name is Scott Barnett, and I am really pleased to be here. A couple of things. There are, right now, 2 documents in the back of the room. One that says timeline. You all should hopefully either have one or they're on the table there, and that's a timeline of today's meeting. Attached to that timeline are a lot of background detailed documents which I'm not going to get into today because they basically inform the PowerPoints. And then there's a PowerPoint. In the back as well, which would be the first one I will go through, which would give kind of an overview of how this is legal, what your legal options are for the district and opportunities. And then there'll be another PowerPoint, which is being copied, which actually gives an overview of each school site. As Mr. Jans mentioned, there are comment cards, and what we ideally would like, if everyone's willing to put your name and contact information, and if you want to put a comment or question on the back, we will make sure that any future meetings that you're directly contacted to know that they're upcoming, where they'll be, when they'll be, so you won't have to rely on going to the website, but of course you're welcome to do that. When the subcommittee of the board said that they wanted to, the next step, reach out and have a workshop with stakeholders, community leaders, citizens, parents, educators. To me, that is the key to a process successful. Having been in local government for 40 years, the vision and innovation and on-the-ground, day-to-day interaction that parents, educators, the community members have is the key to having any successful program. And it can work, and that's why getting your ideas, your vision, your thoughts, your concerns, your questions is critical to any sort of process of this sort. This is both a very simple idea, simple concept, and a very complex process. What's the simple concept? Can a public agency, school district, work with the private sector, the nonprofit sector, to have new and upgraded school facilities built, and that could be a science lab, it could be a ball field, it could be upgraded classrooms, and generate ongoing revenue for salaries, for programs, arts, sports, science, for fixing roofs and so forth. Can the district work with the private nonprofit sector to make those things happen? Money that the state can take away and without raising taxes. Can that be done? That's the concept. And the answer is it can be done. Now on the other side, it's a very complex process. It can take years. There's state law, there's education code, there's local policies, there's zoning ordinances, and when I go through the initial PowerPoint of some of the history and background, I'll point out that some things that seem like fairly simple projects took years to do, partly because some of these processes are new. So I will now go into the handout, the color handout, that hopefully you all should be able to have a copy of. If not, they're on the back table, and to hand it out to most of you there. And this is the first presentation I gave to this board back in April to give some background on this process. So if you go to as I discussed just a minute ago, the idea is to look at the districts. Do you have, as Trustee Huffmore said, do you have underutilized excess property within your school sites that can be better utilized to meet the needs of the students? Create these partnerships with the nonprofit and private sector to essentially use the value of land that you're not using. And you'll see when we look at the other photos that you have very large sites in this district and a lot of parts of existing sites that are just large patches of dirt and fields that can have another use or an improved use. Generate ongoing revenues, construct new facilities, and potentially also even on some sites construct workforce housing for teachers, educators, and so forth. Because as we know, one of the biggest problems, and workforce housing, firefighters, police, those who the community supports as important segments of the community, but teachers, people talk about the salaries for teachers, but we all know just the able to afford an apartment is difficult. And that is one of the most difficult issues in recruitment and retention of employees. Let me go to the next page. It's a case study. Washington Elementary Dog Park. Now there is a site at this school district that is what I call a de facto dog park at Eucalyptus Hills. It is a very large site that the community is using for their dogs, and those of us who have dogs love them as much as our children, certainly. So in this case, Washington Elementary and San Diego Unified, the dogs were using an active school site and doing what dogs do. So then dogs and kids would mix and it would become a health issue, sanitation, health, and safety issue. So what was done in this case, in theory very simple, was to do an agreement with a nonprofit organization, Little Italy Association, where they took part of this site and made a separate dog site for the community. And why did they do this? Because they believed dogs in their community were very important. They separated, they paid for a separate dog park, as you see in the pictures here. They pay to maintain it, they pay, and they give the school revenues every year as lease. So in this case, you have a nonprofit organization said, we want to serve our community and protect the school and the school community. And this was a very, very small site, unlike the site at Eucalyptus Hills. And it didn't cost the district a penny. It was all paid for by the nonprofit sector and continues to get revenue. Now this very simple concept, it took 3 years from the idea of bringing it forward to getting community input, to having legal documentation, to having it built and constructed. So, and this is this simple process. So you can see even simple ideas can take time. And by giving these examples, I'm not saying that these should be implemented here or even meet the community or even meet school sites. These are just examples of what can be done to get your thinking and ideas and your concerns of how a process can work. The second case study that you'll see is the Scripps Ranch joint occupancy. I'm going to be using that term joint occupancy, and this is where it gets into the complexity. This is a legal process under the state education code where school districts have incredible control over an ability to use their properties to work out arrangements with private and nonprofit sector. In this case, there was an unused excess school site. It was just used for some meeting purposes. It was not an active school site. So the district, and this is 10 years ago, sent out requests for proposals, and today, 10 years later, finally, there's a long-term lease with the school district and the developer. The school districts, over the term of the lease, will make $40 million in net value in lease revenues. They are building 253 apartments, which are open, of which 53 are set aside for educators who work at San Diego Unified. If you go into the building, if you go into the apartments, and there's some renderings here, you'll never know the difference between one that is market rate and one for educators, which is half market rate. And they also have built, or completed building, a science lab, science, technology, education, math facility for the district, $5 million building, separate from these apartments, that will be owned and used by the district. and a community garden. All of this at zero cost to the school district and benefiting the district in revenues and facilities. Once again, this is just an example of what could be done on a site if, as a concept. It doesn't have to be this big, it can be smaller, but it just shows the tools that are available under the law and within the options of the school board and the community to take certain opportunities and move them forward. The third case study, and this one, the community decided it wanted to have a new pool. Pools are very expensive, not just to build, could be $20 million or so when they're built by the public sector, but the maintenance costs, maintenance and operations, and ongoing cost of pools are very expensive. In this local area, Mission Bay High School students don't have a pool, so they go to UCSD and pay rent to UCSD to use their school. So they're using district revenue to pay rent to the college to do that. So the concept here was working with the YMCA, who wanted to expand their facilities, expand their footprint in the community, and have a pool that on Pacific Beach Middle School, that a pool would be built and then operated by the YMCA. They would be responsible for all maintenance, all costs, and it would be separate and outside the school budget. The school would not be responsible for any of that opportunity. Now, this was 10 years ago when this started moving ahead. Part of the process was that all school district students would get free use of the pool at any time, and those in the community who, like in every school district, are lower income and meet the needs of free and reduced lunch would also get free use of these facilities. But then something happened a couple years ago, this thing called COVID, and it shut down all the YMCAs, all their programs, all their pools. So this was put aside and delayed, and unfortunately what should have been done and open in place has been delayed. So this is now being looked at again and being jump-started now that the YMCA is back to their membership levels they used to be. So these are just 3 examples of how a school district, if you have a vision of something you want, can work with nonprofit sector, private development sector to get facilities and revenues that will meet the needs of your students and funds that can be taken away. How are we doing on?
You're doing well.
Good, good. Way ahead here, so we could always even. So, what is a real estate utilization strategy? And once again, these are concepts that I am bringing forward based on the law and other districts. Nothing has been approved by the school board or anyone in the district. These are just have been for discussion purposes. Number 1, maintain ownership of all or part of parcels. Sometimes a district may say, hey, we have a parcel that is 23 acres large, like you have a parcel here. Why don't we cut off part of it and sell it to make money? Well, Standing Unified sold $150 million of real estate for one-time purposes. It's short-term benefit, but you get rid of your asset. It's like selling the furniture to, or burning your furniture to heat your house. So I'm recommending that even if you have, and this excess unutilized portions of some of your large properties, that you never sell. But that's ultimately a policy decision. And you maintain ownership completely, and you maintain control completely of every piece and section of your school sites and real estate. Include public involvement. Well, that's critical at every stage, not only the legal requirements, but getting the input and so forth. Cost recovery. What does that mean? Every dollar that the district spends in this process would be recovered by whomever the ultimate partners are with the district. If it's a developer or some other nonprofit organization, the key is the district would be made whole. The first part of any contract with the private sector or developer would say, not only do you pay any future costs, staff costs, consultant costs, but that you reimburse costs to date. So the key is to make sure that the district not only doesn't go out of pocket, but it's whole, and then future revenues would be above that. That's once again a philosophical element which I believe is critical to making this work. And then with it, there are so many aspects to the complexity of this, and such as making sure there are the best legal and support help for the district. For instance, if the district at some point decides it wants to go ahead and work with a nonprofit or private sector, the key is to have the highest quality lawyers, if you will, to negotiate those contracts. Those will be paid for by the developer, but working for the district. You want to make sure, and I'll tell you, having 40 years studied local government, ran the Taxpayers Association, been a local elected official twice, government doesn't always negotiate the estimates. Not because the motivations aren't in place, but because their purpose, the reason for being is to not negotiate deals. That's where the private sector's goal is. They want to negotiate the best deals. They want to make a profit. They want to make money. We understand that. So you want to have on your side of the table the people who know all the various legal loopholes, the skills, and once again, that would be paid for by the other side. So having that high quality legal assistance. For instance, at the project I mentioned, the Scripps Ramsey apartment project, why is it 10 years? 3 years with litigation. The developers paid and covered all the costs of that litigation, not the district, but the developers. And they did that because the contract written was saying they were required to do that. So it's key to protect the interests, both financial and other aspects of the district. I mentioned, the next page kind of gives a list of some of the opportunity types of things that can be done in partnerships. I gave some detailed, a few examples, but for instance, the STEM lab, a community garden, workforce housing, dog park, ball fields. I know that every school district that the ball fields tend to become older. They are not, the funds are not there to maintain them. My kids played soccer. They're always tripping into gopher holes and so forth. Those are not only issues as far as parents, but those are liability issues. Something as simple as upgraded ball fields might be a priority. Preservation of historic structures. I know I'm not supposed to mention them, but you have one right here, which is owned by the district. Can that be preserved with that and used for some other district community use, but paid for by the private and nonprofit sector? That can be done. In fact, one of the projects that was done was preserving an old house. So these give some, just basically it's up to the imagination and creativity of what it is you all want. How are we doing on the,
You're about 3 minutes ahead according to schedule.
and how about the other PowerPoint?
No, you've got time for that too.
Okay,
But
so,
you-
well, yeah,
so-
so should we have,
Yeah,
what
what-
other professions?
Yeah, what I suggest now is, for clarity purpose, if anybody has any questions about the process he's laid out. He's gonna, I think, Scott, you're then gonna next get into school sites and where there is
I'm gonna
underutilized property.
Well, I would do an analysis of every site,
Okay.
and then the acreage, what's there now, the use, and then it's up to the district to then decide whether they consider them utilized or whether they want to take a next step. But that's what the next PowerPoint will be, but there's.
Okay, so what I suggest for this first round, let's not, it's not comments about what you want to see. That'll be after he looks at we look at the underutilized sites and the potential sites. I guess that's the potential sites is what we're talking about. So for clarity purposes, any questions about the process? Yes, sir. And go ahead and stand up and speak up. Do you want folks' names, please?
My name's John Stauffer.
Perfect.
Just a quick question. Do the schools pay property tax on their own real estate?
What they do is if there are parcels that are, if there are parcels that are completely unutilized, then they do pay property taxes. Now this is something I'll be following up with the district. This district's 100 years old. Not every district always knows every parcel they do or do not own. We believe they do. There is a process where the district every year, if they have a parcel that is totally unutilized, they have to send a report into the state, say what it is, and there has to be an actual property tax that is paid for that purpose.
So there's no property tax paid on this property right here?
Right. Or any of
So in other words,
the active
you get
school sites.
penalized for not using properties you just have.
So when there's a transition or a project like this, then that property would then generate property tax, or how would that work once it's,
Any private development on a site would be subject to property tax. Like for instance, the apartments I mentioned, even though it's on leased district land in that case, the building was completely built by the private sector, the apartments. Now the public building, the science lab, was paid for by private money, but then is given to the school district to own it. So that building will then not pay any taxes.
So the private developer does not get a break on property tax?
That's correct.
All right. Other questions? Yes, in the back. Speak up.
Name?
I'm curious how.
Can you state your name?
I'm Jessica Weekly. I was curious, how would we make revenue from the dog park?
How would you what?
How do they make revenue from the dog park?
Well, the dog park doesn't give revenue, it reduces costs. If you have, now for instance, in this case, not knowing exactly what the district may or may not want on Eucalyptus Hills, if you even want to make that an official dog park. Right now, there's legal liability to a public agency when you have dogs running on its property because of what dogs do, especially when kids are interacting with them. There's current maintenance costs that if the district decides it has the resources to clean up after the dog, to fence it, to have disposal bags and so forth, those are costs. If you do an agreement, in the case of the Little Italy one, all those costs and the construction and the security and the maintenance paid for by the nonprofit. So the district saved money, plus in that case, the way it was negotiated, the nonprofit paid rent or a fee to the school, which happened to be Washington Elementary, to say, hey, we're using part of your property for this dog park that serves the broader community, so we're gonna pay the district rent, which then stayed at that school site. So the answer is, it depends on the negotiation. It depends also on what whomever will build that dog park, what they want in return, what the benefits are, because people don't do things for free.
So in this case, the ongoing revenue after the cost is a lease fee?
Yes.
Okay, does that answer it?
Yes.
Okay.
But every situation's different.
Sure. Other questions? Yes, sir.
My name is Rick Watson. I had a question, a concern. You mentioned, you need top lawyers. The lawyers are very expensive.
Mhm.
In my opinion, I see a flaw in what your system is using. If the district is going to be represented by somebody, you want to pay for those lawyers. You don't want to have the developers pay for lawyers, or you're not going to be represented appropriately. especially because the developers will, they'll be biased to the developers, so.
Let
that's a
me
major-
clarify
Can I give an
that.
example?
Let me clarify that.
Yeah.
When you enter into negotiations with any, like right, with a, to do any agreement with the private sector, or even to build something in private property, developers are required to give deposits to the district to cover all costs. That could be planning costs, that'll be legal costs, that'll be engineering costs. So they put it, they don't hire the lawyers. They give, they would give the district a deposit of whatever it might be. For instance, on the Scripps Ranch project, I think as soon as they signed the agreement, they gave the district $1 million. The district then used that money to make sure, and that was to cost recovery, that wasn't even rent, to make sure that all their costs are recovered. So the developers are not hiring the lawyers, they're not recommending the lawyers work for the district just as the consultants do, just as everyone else, but the money is not coming out of district general fund dollars, which you need for other purposes. So it's used in every single government entity, city councils, counties, and so forth, the same basic process to make sure there's cost recovery, but total control of the hiring and the lawyers and consultants who work for the district. They're the client, to avoid exactly what
Does
you're
that
saying.
answer it? Does that answer it, sir?
Yeah, Mark, it answers my question, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yes, right here.
So do the developers or does the county pay for the road improvements that are needed if you build a facility like apartments or a public pool or thing that brings increased traffic? Who pays for the roads and the infrastructure for that?
Well, like any development, in this case, you're under the county jurisdiction. If it's determined, because there has to be environmental impact reports, and those will determine everything from sensitive species to traffic and so forth. If it's determined, for instance, you need to put a stoplight in somewhere, and that costs $1 million. That's part of the cost of the project that is paid for by the private sector. If there are road improvements, if there's road widening, it really depends on every project is different, but all associated costs and mitigating impacts of any project is ultimately paid for by the entity, developer or nonprofit that's constructing that facility. And those are how those costs are covered.
Good.
Have you guys approached any developers that are showing interest that led all this to come up?
Not for Lakeside, but I served on the San Diego Unified Board. I was a trustee, and when I was there, I said, wait a minute, we don't have enough money. We have old facilities. Now, it's a different world, it's a different planet, different politics, I understand that. But through my entire career, I said, how do we generate revenues for the things we need? So the answer is for Lakeside, haven't approached or talked to anybody, any developer or anything, because it's up to the board at some point, if they even want to go ahead, to set the process and the timeline. If you end up wanting to have a specific proposal, you have to develop a legal request for proposal. That request for proposal is developed after public input, board approval, goes out to the broader development or nonprofit development community. They have to legally respond to, and that's how the process works. You can't have individual sidebar discussions legally with any specific.
So Scott, if the board decided they'd like to take this opportunity, look at, choose a particular site, and they develop a request for proposal process, it wouldn't be wide open. The board would refine it down to, we want I'm not gonna say, because I don't want anybody to.
Well, let me actually.
Your list. Say they want a pool, okay, or say they want a STEM lab, or a STEAM lab, or I like healthcare in there, so it's STEAM lab. But, say they want to develop something like that. That RFP process would be that specific, to say, hey, we're soliciting proposals for nonprofit or private sector partners to come in and develop that along with whatever generates revenue, right?
Yes, you would designate a portion of a site and say, or it could be broader, Barry. It could be you have 10 school sites, and every site you want to upgrade your sports fields. If that's part of your wish list, and we'll get kind of to the vision wish list later, the board might say you have a broader request for proposal, and we want up 10 upgraded sports fields. We want a new science lab on Lakeside Middle School site. We want revenues ongoing for teacher salaries and so forth. That could be a broader RFP, and then say, well, we have these different pieces of parcels that we think we need to hear what you as the private sector need to do to pay for those improvements. So it could be broader, or it could be very narrow and specific. It really depends on what you want. You tell your elected officials you want, and they determine whether they want to go out and ask the private nonprofit sector, because they have to put the pencil to paper and say that how it works, whether it will work or not, because ultimately they're going to pay for it, and then the district will respond. So the answer is, it could be very, very, very narrow, or it could be broad.
Yeah, but to answer the initial question, there's no developer's been talked.
No.
Go.
What can you guarantee, if any guarantees, that the developer won't go sideways and try to go after the school and a long, drawn out court thing? What can you guarantee that that's not gonna happen? Because this seems like a really big gamble.
Well, right now, districts and public agencies have relationships with private sector all the time. Contractors, for instance, who built and constructed parts of your bond program. You have agreements with them. Part of those agreements, I assume, you have certain protections. You have either deposits to make sure that if a project is half finished and the contractor goes belly up, that there are funds aside to make sure to protect the public sector. The same thing with any agreement, that there has to be, there are various methods, whether it's deposits of funds or whether it's bonding or insurance to protect the public sector. And once again, the most common relationship is with contractors on building and upgrading schools. Any of those contractors could disappear, go belly up, have problems. And that's why you want to make sure you have protections within those agreements to protect the district and the public sector. The same with any, whether it's a dog park or whether it's an apartment complex or a STEM lab, you want to make sure that the language is in there that protects the district.
For school improvements, it's legally required. It's legally required to have, for the low responsive bidder to be bonded and insured.
Well, absolutely bonded, insured, and I mean, that's so, is there risk? There is definitely, there's always risk in this world, but the key is to do everything you can within your power to protect the district financially and its liability to ensure that it's what's promised will be done. But tomorrow, the developer or contractor could go under, and that's the potential. But part of the vetting process, when you choose your partner, is to look at their history. Have they been a person or a group that's been in litigation all the time? Have they fulfilled their commitments? Have they been successful? It's like a relationship of any sort. You need to make sure who you're getting involved with for a number of years is someone that you want to wake up with every day and say, this is the person I want to do business with. And if you're not satisfied with those people, you don't do business with them.
Yes.
I might be jumping ahead, but
Can we get your name?
Laura Watts. What is the process for who votes on this? Who decides? Do we form a committee? Is it just a school board decision? Does it go to a vote to the community?
Well, it's like any other, legally, the school board has decision over any agreements with any other group or organization. If they want to tomorrow have a joint occupancy or a joint use agreement with the county on a piece of land for a park or a dog park, soccer field, the school board makes that decision based on whatever input process they want. It's not, since this is not raising taxes, it's not requiring a vote like a school bond does. The school bond requires a 55% vote of the public, and you're raising taxes. There, the school district enters into dozens and dozens of contractual agreements, if you look at their agenda, and that the board votes on. And this would be under their purview to ultimately to determine that as your elected officials.
So the board of 5 ultimately can decide what they want to go on these spaces?
The board of 5, after following legal processes, yeah, absolutely. Just like today, if the board decides tomorrow that it wants to paint a school purple, they could, I'm not saying they'll do that, but they could do that tomorrow.
Don't speak for me, please.
Okay. They can do that without public vote, or if they want to, just like they have done a number of construction improvements, the actual design, after the bonds were approved, and a number of new construction projects were due on various sites, the board ultimately approved the look, the design, the square footage of those sites
Right.
with public input, and that wouldn't
So,
be any different.
When we wrap up today, Laura and Andrew may want to, make some comments. Not right now. But I was just
Hey, I was gonna close with some comments,
By the way, the
so-
purple school, it was a 3-2 vote, in case you missed it.
Okay.
But no, at the end, you may want to, because in my view, it's not a bond, it's not a tax, but it's a unique process that's allowed in state law, and I think the board, by saying, okay, we're gonna have meetings outside the norm, like this one, you're kind of saying, hey, let's get the public input on this. So the public input is essential to the process, even though the board ultimately has the authority of vote.
Just seems painting a building purple versus adding an apartment complex
It's
is
a
a
little
little
bit
different.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying,
Yeah,
of course it is, of course it is, but the key is, do you, as citizens, have desires and needs for this district? Buildings that the roofs don't leak, that there's maybe not 50-year-old, that's most of the districts in the county, 50-year-old buildings, lead in the pipes, all asbestos, roof leaks,
We
roofs
have
that leak.
systems for that, those taxes. pay for
Sorry?
that. We have systems, taxes that pay for those.
No, they don't cover it in any district. There's not enough revenue to cover that in any district, I can tell you, in California.
And we do want to get to your ideas. That's
So-
the essence of today. And your ideas, concerns, suggestions, and that can run the gamut. That could be, I'd like to see, this, because we need it, or it could be, hey, I don't want to see this. I mean, it could be whatever, but was that your comment, or did you have
No,
something?
no,
But what I'm saying is,
What?
if it's, you have the desires for new and upgraded facilities and ongoing revenue to pay teachers more, to have other programs, you either, for facilities, have to pass a bond and raise taxes. And for general revenues, there's no new source of revenue.
I understand what you're saying. But-
I'm responding to the young lady's question about.
But did you have a question too?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
so originally these properties in the district were purchased by taxpayers, correct? Right?
Yeah, I mean, when the districts were formed 100 years ago, they're all owned by the taxpayers, they're owned by all of you.
Exactly, so they really shouldn't be, so the school district should be good stewards to the property we
Absolutely.
donated and we paid for.
I agree.
It should be landlords.
I agree.
It should not, well, yeah, you don't agree. You're saying they should be landlords, we should rent it out, or we should sell this property. What happens when we have to expand and we have more kids? I mean.
I'm not
these are-
suggesting selling, I in fact specifically recommend you never sell a piece of property.
Okay, well, you said that is an option.
Well, it's up, tomorrow the school district could sell part
I
of the
don't think it should be
property.
up to 5 people to make these huge decisions to a community.
I-
But I just want to get your opinion, my question was to you, don't you think we should be good stewards to these areas? been purchased by taxpayers, the taxpayers should have a say in if those areas are rented out, or if the district wants to maybe concentrate on educating kids instead of becoming landlords and creating revenues. Okay?
That's why we're here today, is for you all to inform, to give us input, which we're gonna pass on to the school board, and they will decide whether they even wanna consider these options.
I appreciate it, thank you.
I just want to make a comment. You did mention that you want the community to be a part of this decision, and you scheduled this meeting at 8 a.m. when parents are taking their kids to school, most of them, or busy working. If you really want the community's input, why is this not at 6 p.m. on a Thursday?
You know, having been a parent, well, it could be Little League and after work, school, we all have complex. I mean, this is one of a series of opportunities for input. There's been 2 public meetings at evening on this subject on the public agenda at nighttime as well, already.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
It is inconvenient for some people.
I understand, and I don't know that, I'm not gonna sit here and say I think this.
It was Barry's idea.
Well, no, but the whole point is, this is, technically, this meeting isn't required for the school board to consider this process.
Yeah, that's scary.
There's going to be school board meetings where this, and maybe other meetings, come to the school board at that time, where there's gonna be other opportunities to weigh in. I think the school board, by picking this, was like saying, hey, it's unique, so we wanna try to inform the community more about the opportunity and see what the reaction is. But this isn't gonna be the only opportunity.
Can I address that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, this is
Just
not.
don't take 5 minutes.
I won't. Yeah, give a politician a mic, great, okay. But look, this is not the only opportunity. I want to stress that fundamentally. To me, this is all about hearing from you about what you'd like to consider or not consider. And I think it's really important that when we're making, I really want to encourage everyone this morning, don't make statements that say we are doing anything. Nothing has been done. And I want to fundamentally stress that to everybody. I've heard a lot of stuff. The bottom line is, this is all about hearing from you what you think. So when someone says, well, you've done this, literally, that's not accurate. Like, there's nothing that's been done. We're here sitting listening to you this morning. We're going to have way more opportunity. We have a November 9th board meeting where everything from today is going to come to the board. Then there's going to be then the plan is to do a workshop in the future, more workshops, more input. So this is not even remotely over. So it's very in its infancy. So,
But didn't you spend $25,000 for the study?
to start this whole, to initiate opportunity search, yes.
Wow.
Somebody has to. Yes.
Okay, so
But policy decisions.
We are focused
policy
on,
decisions.
we're focused on clarity about this opportunity. And then we're gonna, after Scott goes into, he's gonna look at some school sites, right? We're gonna look at some opportunities. And then we're gonna solicit your input on whether you wanna see anything or not, what you might wanna see, what you don't wanna see, whatever input is. Question? Yes.
Oh, Tiny Chip. I was wondering, do many of them and the plans involve changing the zoning, or are you gonna stay within the current zoning laws of that area?
The answer is, it depends. In the zoning law, like for instance, on this project, Scripps Ranch, it was all zoned where they didn't have to even ask for zoning change in any way. Even though if school also it depends on what site it is and what you may or may not want to do. So,
My concern is Eucalyptus Hills is all large properties and turning
Right.
it into multi-res.
Right. Well,
The roads don't support it, the structure doesn't
of course
support
not,
it.
yeah, and I agree. I agree, you would never even consider a high-density apartment complex anywhere on that neighborhood or on that site.
Okay,
I agree.
thank you.
But that,
But he's the consultant, so it's up to the school board.
but to answer your question, you zoning, if the zoning doesn't meet what the school board wants to proceed, and then zoning would have to change, and that would be part of the process. Because it has to meet the legal zoning requirements.
Does it change the zoning around it as well, or just that property?
No, the school district has total control over its site only. And then if you have to change zoning, then the county would be involved in that process.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and speaking of, when he said complexity, yeah, I mean, that would be a real, to suggest anything in which zoning off of the school site would be changed, you know, you're running into having to get county approval and so on and so forth. I mean, speaking of complexity, it's almost probably a non-starter. Yeah, you had another one, sir?
Yeah, back to the revenue situation we were talking about. You know, my question is, remember we had the lottery come up years ago, and that those funds were put into the schools, and then the taxes were taken away from the schools, and those funds were going back to the city. What prevents this same thing from happening to your revenues that are generated?
Well, not to go into great deal, the lottery was passed by the voters, and actually specific lottery funds, every district does get a specific amount of lottery funds for its school. Very Standard Unified, $1 billion+ budget gets $14 million a year. Books with nothing. I don't know what Lakeside gets. They, as far as the overall, if you want, we can spend hours talking about educational funding and how it doesn't work. The bottom line is these revenues are generated to go directly to the school district's general fund based on contracts and agreements created within the district. The state doesn't approve those contracts, they're not involved in them. But yes, school finance is a major problem, which is why we probably need some changes in the legislative level, but that's different.
Well, no, and then, so, you know, I mean, as far as your input, you know, and maybe you've already given it, but, you know, if a concern is that, you know, the legislature is going to change the rules at some point, I mean, that would be something the board wants to hear as part of the process, right?
I have a couple concerns. Todd Owens. One of my concerns is the county, when we talk about dog parks, there's a whole PLDO funding, right, for public land dedication use. Why are they not putting in the dog parks? I don't think the burden should be put on the district to put in dog parks, baseball fields, those type of things. It's just a concern that I have that we're going to use school district dollars to build something that the county should be doing.
Well, first of all, I agree, the county should fulfill a lot of our roles, but they're not.
Yeah, but that's not, I'm sorry, that's where I'm having a problem is.
So wait,
It's not our
so Todd, if I may for a second,
Sure.
because I can tell
But they're using your property as a dog park right now.
So, Scott, instead of a debate, Todd is providing his input that he doesn't think the school district should be doing anything other government agencies should be doing. That's input. That's input. So that's fair input. Okay.
My second concern is, if our educational goals change, for 99 years where you have leased a piece of property, we're gonna be generating some revenue off of this property. But if our educational goals change, how do we change our funding to support the new goal? We built a STEM lab, and now we wanna build a wood shop. Where do we come up with that money? It's already locked away for 99 years in a lease that we're getting money back. We want to change the direction of the district. How are we going to do that? Where are we going to find the next generation of revenue? That's kind of a concern. So those are my two concerns.
Okay. And Lisa, we're capturing, we're getting into concerns now, and that's fine. But let's wrap up any questions you have for clarity, and then we're gonna try to get your input. Okay. Yes.
Okay, I have a question that maybe will take part. So,
Can we get your name?
I'm Carrie Strong, thank you. What does a project like this require? It obviously requires a lot of people power in the background to make something like this even get off the ground if that's decided that it's going to happen. So in your experience, Strong, because I know you've seen this through San Diego Unified, they have a much bigger staffing department. Our business office is a handful of people, literally. What kind of staffing requirement does the district need to provide to see something like this actually happen? And I understand you said like those costs could be recouped. So would that include, if we had to hire staff to manage this aspect, would that include recouping their costs, or would those people then become employees funded out of our general fund?
So another way of putting it, and tell me if I'm right on this, I mean, you've got existing staff that obviously we be tasked with something, and then you've got now.
No, that is what I'm saying.
Actually, every district's different. The intent in discussing this district is that your staff is very busy already. They're overwhelmed with their existing responsibilities and priorities, and that it would not be asked the existing staff to do anything as far as additional responsibilities and so forth, that it would all be outside additional consultants that would work for the district and then would be paid for by, reimbursed and then paid for by the developers. So the idea is to make sure that your existing staff doesn't have to take away from its already major responsibility. It doesn't mean that their staff isn't involved. It doesn't give ideas, doesn't have leadership, because the superintendent, obviously all consultants ultimately work for the superintendent. But understand, no staff would not be asked to, is not being asked to do anything beyond what their current responsibilities are.
Sauce, yes, right here.
Hi, my name is Polly Shelby, and I have a question going back to your agreements between the district and the developers. So I'm trying to word this correctly. So in your language in your contract agreements, so does the language in the agreement, does it protect the school sites does it protect the school site from a developer, leading its way in, from like overtaking the school site, meaning it does? Okay. Like
Look, basically, say, if the district decides it has a piece of one of its district sites that it wants to set aside for some sort of agreement, it would be a clear boundary of what would be used on that parcel. And the developer would not have any rights or abilities to go beyond whatever the parameters are in the written agreement. And there would also be issues, obviously, if it's on an existing school site, you'd have to separate uses, you need to protect the students and so forth. And so yes, the answer is yes. Everything ultimately the legal agreements are to ensure that the district, its students, its employees, and its basic purpose of educating kids is paramount and is protected.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Crystal Gardner, what is the current agreement with the Boys and Girls Club? Is it sort of like this?
I don't know. I'm sure Todd, would probably know more about that because that comes under his purview. So I'll defer to you, sir.
Yeah, there's no money generated from Boys and Girls Club.
Well, there must be some sort of use agreement, though,
There's
even if
use
it's
agreement for the-
like for $1 a year or something.
Exactly.
That, we may want to get into more detail offline with you about what that looks like. Okay. Other questions? Okay, thanks. Scott? Yes, go ahead.
If you agree that our staffing issue is on fire, what do you think are our top 3 staffing issues?
That's for you all
Yeah.
to determine. That's for you all to determine if you believe there's a need for more revenues and how you get them, and then you tell your school board elected officials and they decide if they can afford to spend more money and where that money comes from. And
I mean, what do we need to hire right now? Are we seeing a lot of turnover? The bus driver issue, is that one of your top 3?
that's a school board policy issue.
Lisa, do
The transportation, the bus driver, that's not just our school district, it's a nationwide issue with bus drivers. We have been, I would say our team likes to think out of the box. Todd's got a great team in transportation. We just changed some job descriptions to allow for 12-month bus drivers to give people more opportunities we're gonna be getting the electric buses here, according to some of the districts that have those bus drivers like to drive those more than the old diesels. And so hopefully, but it's just, the whole issue is the costliness of new bus drivers. For anybody to get a bus driver license, you have to go through a lot of training. It's out-of-pocket costs. And so just nowadays, people just aren't interested in that type of job. So, trying to think of ways to come up with ideas to make it enticing to get people to drive a bus again. It's a nationwide, it's not just our district. So some of these classifications of jobs are unfortunately, you know, in this cycle of things, people just don't want to do it anymore. So
It is like one of the top needs in staffing, in our
it's a
staffing,
need
in our district.
for providing transportation. Now in Ed Code, transportation for general education students is not a requirement, only for special education students. So that's why in the Great Recession, you saw massive layoffs with bus drivers, because it wasn't a requirement. So districts then went to that, you know, what's the need that's required, and what's the need that isn't required. And those were the jobs that were cut, that were not requirements.
Not one of our top three.
We would like to have it,
so
yes.
let me just suggest, you know, Scott hasn't been brought in to determine the top three, that's for the policymakers, but worthy discussion, but we need to, okay, so, yes.
I was just wondering, does generating revenue in this way affect our eligibility for future bonds?
No.
What was the question? Repeat the question, because it was kind of.
Does the generating revenue in this way affect eligibility for future bonds? And I think you were talking about, school bonds? No.
Yeah, and the one over here.
Just to bring it back down to a teacher level, all of this wanting to generate revenue, how does that affect our kids' learning? Right now, it's hard enough to get them to school on time, to get them to get engaged. If you're improving the site that they're on, and parents have to sit in traffic, or whatever the reason is, then are we gonna wait however long it takes for those kids to fall more behind than they already are?
That's above my pay grade on this particular issue.
Well,
I have
guess
the personal
question
views
would
and
be, is
opinions, but
generating
that's.
revenue more important than the education of students?
Oh, well, the facilities your kids go to, as been a parent, that was always critical. Are the rooms, are they 50-year-old buildings with leaky roofs and maybe lead in the pipes and so forth, or are they newer facilities? Are the fields my girls played soccer on, did they have gopher holes in them? Are my kids a trip, or were they not? I mean, but where's the money? So does that?
What she's asking is, if you improve a site and that causes, if that causes traffic impacts for 3 years while you're improving the site, and the kids can't get there, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I mean, it's like, that, obviously the school board would need to take that into account, whether you want to use any outside revenue to do something where you're gonna have an impact on traffic. I mean, it's just like any other school improvement project, whether you're building new classrooms, so there's gonna impact traffic.
When you build construction bonds, if you do a whole site modernization, Unified today is doing $700 million of construction projects, $2.5 million a day, and they have construction on existing sites where they have to rebuild half the school while the kids are still going there. It's an art and a science, but the question is, do you want these improvements? It's a management issue, and it can be done effectively, but yes, there will be impacts if you do anything on a site.
Kind of like us that were raised drinking out of hoses, and now our kids drink out of bottled water. So it's kind of like one or the other.
All right.
Very difficult.
So, here's what I suggest. We've got a PowerPoint to show the school, I guess I'm gonna call it
It's just existing condition, existing sites. There's no opinion as to otherwise. First of all, forgive me, this should also have been printed and handed out. I take responsibility for the problem. Everyone who wants to fill out a card with your contact information, I will personally email this. It's on the board dockets, but I will personally email you what you're about to see as well. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but essentially, we looked at every site that the district owns that we are aware of, 11 sites, including this site. And it basically, will show the acreage, the current use, and the number of students who go there, and in an aerial photo, and that's just gives you the district and the parents and the community a sense of what you actually have as to look at.
Okay, so you're gonna run through this pretty quickly?
Yes, let's jump ahead then.
Can we go full screen? Okay.
As I said, we'll just keep going ahead till we get the first, keep going ahead, thank you. Go ahead to the next. Okay, here. This is where we're sitting right now. You can see that this side is 1.75 acres. And it's pointing out the uses. There's food services on here, there's the building we're sitting on here, and there's the historic building. So this is just showing what you have currently on this site. The next slide, please. This site is the Eucalyptus Hills site of the current Dream Academy. And it shows the total acreage, I think it says 8.57 acres. Okay, 8.67. You can see currently what we call de facto dog park, because it's not a legal dog park. But that's the area to the green area right that the community uses. And then there is the area where the Dream Academy students go, and then there's a very large parking lot. And as someone pointed out, that is in a large parcel, single family neighborhood currently. The next slide, please. This site is Winter Gardens Elementary, and once again, it basically just shows the acreage and the use, and does that say 9 acres?
9 acres.
Thank you. And the number of students right now, 385, based on the 22-23 enrollment. Those numbers are modified. This site is Riverview International Academy with 522 students and 8.5 acres. I would just comment, most of the sites in Lakeside are significantly larger than a lot of school districts. So they're very large school sites. All of the structures are single story. You have a lot of bungalows or portables on a lot of your sites, as is very common in other districts as well. And in your case, you also have in this site pretty large parking area as well.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, did I misspeak?
Yes.
Okay. Next slide. Next slide. This is the one with the large parking area. Sorry. This one is what's the acres?
7.12 acres.
Lakeside Farms Elementary. It shows 623 kids and the total acreage of the site. And then you see the new barn structure and then the parking, and that's surrounded mostly by mobile homes and others. Next slide. Window Park Elementary. You can see the enrollment, and you can see the buildings, and mostly currently it's approximately 50-year-old buildings with unimproved dirt and other things surrounding them. Next slide. This is the Lakeside Middle School site, which, as you all know, there's 2 slides for this because it also includes the Charter High School site. The total site acreage is some 18 acres. It includes the middle school, it also includes the Lee preschool, it also includes some non-educational facilities. It also includes what the district has indicated it desires to have as a new tech building site indicated in there. And there's a very large parcel in the back that was donated discussing a future sports field. And transportation is on the site as well. And next slide, please. This is, as I say, it's the same site, but it breaks out the Charter High School enrollment there as opposed to middle. So you have the middle school, and then you have the Charter High School.
Middle and high school.
Correct. The previous slide focused on the enrollment into the middle school. On this slide, you'll see the enrollment of the Charter High School, all contained on this site here. Next slide, please. Tierra del Sol Middle School, the largest site I believe you have in your district, over 23 acres. Current enrollment is 710 based on last year's numbers. And the new gymnasium that was built is shown there. The rest of the structures are older existing structures. Next slide. Lakeview Elementary enrollment was 657 on, let's say, 9.2 acres. Next slide. The Lemon Crest Elementary, 487 enrollment, and is that 13 acres or what is that? 13 acres. And the next one. Okay. Those are, and then basically I list the legal processes that you can go through for basically reiterating what I said at the opening. What was hoping would be done now in the time that was remaining was a wish list, a vision, hopes, dream. What do you want ideally to see? Putting aside money at the moment, putting aside all other constraints, what type of improvements do you want? Do you want upgraded schools? Do you want new sports fields? Do you want tech labs? Do you want revenues? And what do you want those revenues for? Basically a wish list which we're taking down and we will pass on the school board.
Okay, I'm gonna start over here and try to go across this and see hands yet.
Yeah, just curious, what were your recommendations for revenue? Or what are your recommendations for revenue for these areas?
As far as, it depends on what the desire of the district is. If it all depends on what you want. Oh, you mean as far as actual general revenues?
Yes.
It depends on, that's up to the board to decide. I don't know how much you want for salaries and how much you want for maintenance.
I'm saying on the sites themselves, your construction, your revenue generation for each area.
Don't have any
recommendations?
Not yet. It's just so premature to even consider for each site until we know what the district wants and what the policy decisions are. So that takes a lot of analysis. We're just not at that point yet to be accurate.
You haven't looked at any sites and said, hey, I mean, you've looked at sites to see where there's.
We've looked at the sites to see what's there now and how much space there is. And then as far as revenues generated, it depends on what ultimately goes there and what you want. If the district says it wants a science building built, that costs money. If the more structures you have a private sector built, the less that frees up for revenue. If you say they'd rather have rent and lease revenue, then you need to build less buildings. So it's kind of deciding on, it's squeezing out a balloon. And so that's the trade-off. You want buildings, that's where the money will go. If you want revenues, that's where the money will go. If you want a combination, so that's.
I was referring to the revenues though. Where do the revenues come from? Which ideas are you proposing?
I'm not proposing any of
for
this.
revenue, to create revenue.
I'm not proposing any of this.
I thought that's what we're doing this for. Create revenue.
What was proposed, and I think what the district board decided, discussed in two previous meetings, two regular board meetings, was looking at this opportunity to see if there's anything that should be considered. It wasn't, there were no specifics about anything, right?
There's $25,000 to explore this. What did we get for that? Like what did you guys do for that money?
Okay, I'll be real quick about it. If you look at this main agenda and attached to it, there are just superficially very in-depth analysis paid with planners, with legal analysis, legislative analysis, and each of those are backed up by state ed code, state law, local zoning reviews. This was a lot of man hours just for this backup, and then paying for the overview of each site by the drones, the analysis, and putting it together. And it's based on my time and
so far I've got a donut hole. Okay,
Yes.
That's what I've got.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so you do have the recommendation slide where you say consolidate magnet school programs. Can you tell us what you determine are magnet?
That's an option. Well, you have three that I'm aware of. You have the Dream Academy, and then what I'm calling Magnet. And if I'm misspeaking, then you have the Dream Academy, which means it's not a neighborhood school. People come from all over the district to see it. And then you have your very successful language schools, which are on two different sites. The question is, are they most efficient being on two different sites? Does that work best for the operations?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Let's go. He asked, consider consolidation of magnet school programs, which right now you have three, as I said. And the question is it the most efficient for serving the needs of the students to have them separated or not? That's, ultimately, it makes more sense, I believe, to have them be more holistic. But that is a policy decision first, and if that doesn't make sense, and if it agrees, then how do you make that work from a logistical and financial point of view? And what's best for the kids has to drive all this. What is best for them?
Right here in front, and then back here, and then over here.
Having served previously on the board when these decisions such as establishing the program up at Winter Gardens and splitting that program because of size. I know a lot of the decision-making that went into these things. One of the things that I wish to see come out of this is that we have flexibility, because having served on this board, I know you have to be flexible as the community grows, as it contracts, as the economy grows, as the economy contracts. And to enter into a 99-term lease, to me, is just tying the hands of the district. When you consider that this district is 100 years old, that started with one school, and all the changes that have happened in that 100 years. And, I mean, Disney is 100 years old this year, and it started with one mouse. And you see that it's a multi-billion-dollar industry today. So I hate to see us tie up our hands with a lease, whatever it is. For if we think it'll benefit a program today, that technology or whatever will maybe not even be in existence 50 years from now. And no one in this room, our grandchildren, may not even be alive at the end of this 99 years.
So great input.
Let me just point out, 99 years is the maximum allowable under the law. It's each lease changes depending on what the agreement is, who is with, and what the use is, but that is the maximum allowed under the law.
Okay, so let me just say this, great input. I think it's exactly the kind of input we're seeking. If you I'm gonna go around the horn here. I saw several hands. If you would like to write your comments down, such as that, or anything else in specifics with your name, everything's gonna be captured. Okay. Lisa, would we be looking for both? Would we be looking for people to say something and write it down if they'd like? Andrew's saying yes. The board president says yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, Tom, whichever. There's lots of cards in the back.
We're going to take every comment that was
And put your names on it and contact info.
made today, and we're going to, good, positive, critiques, questions, concerns, every comment will be listed and sent to the school board, and every comment on a card will be sent to the school board. So the more that we will do so, we will make sure it's passed on.
I'm gonna go in order here. I see hands right here.
Okay, so my wish and I'm gonna be firm on this, is that Dream Academy stays open at Eucalyptus Hills, because it has made such an impact on my children's lives, okay? My son and my daughter both lost their father to COVID in 2021. He's only 44 years old. My son's almost 14. 2 years ago, he would not get out of the car to go to school. He now goes to Dream Academy, which first started out as this program, but now Dream Academy, and he looks forward to going to school every day. My daughter now attends 6th grade there. She looks forward to going to school every day. When she was going to Lemoncrest, she did not look forward to going to school. They love the gardening program there. They love the hands-on program. It's just everything that Dream Academy has to offer. I can't stress to you guys how important it is that it stays open and it stays at Eagleton Hills. And it's, I could go on and on and on, and I could speak for so many other parents. I have other family that have children that attend that school, and I could just see it growing and growing and growing. And it's vital that Dream Academy stays open and stays at Eagleton Hills.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
So most of your examples that you had in here, it looks like the sites were kind of parceled off so that it's still maintained a school site for the kids. Are we saying that you could decide, like Eagleton Hills, you just completely remove the school and that's just now a revenue generating facility, whether you put in a pool, park, whatever, but it would not, you could move the school out of it? Is that what we're saying is an option? Or will they all remain school sites also?
No, all the academic programs, ultimately it's about the kids, what works best for the kids. And that's what drives all this. As far as, whether it's the existing sites, you want to remodel them, upgrade them, and so forth, or use part of those sites for some joint use, that really depends on what you all want. If you want something, it has to be paid for in some way, and that's where the balance comes. So the answer is, it's up. We're not recommending anything except saying, my job is to lay out every option. And even ones that people might say, we absolutely don't even want to consider that. I'm still, my obligation, I believe, is still lay those options out. And then the board can discount them. And then ultimately, they will decide. So not determining anything at this point, except trying to say, now hopefully, what do you want? That you want improved or more revenues that you don't have now? And then the question is, can you use a process like that to get that? That's really kind of what we're
Or
trying
to
to
be
get.
fair, what you don't want is what you don't want.
Yeah.
So that, yeah.
Well, but the vision, we need to know, in an ideal world, what do you want? This lady said she loves the Dream Academy and it should stay in that location. That's great. Are there new things that you want, new improvements? What do you want? That's what we want to hear.
Right here in front.
I will actually send you guys an email with more information, but for the sake of time, I will spare you my minutia of comments. 14 years ago, I choiced into the school district. When I was looking for a kindergarten for my daughter, I wanted the best for her. I toured so many schools in San Diego, and I ended up in Lakeside. When it came time to buy a house, we bought a house in Lakeside because of the schools. I've spent many hours volunteering in these schools, and I've seen them change over the years. And to give you an idea of how I feel about this, I homeschooled this one. I pulled her after first grade from Lakeside Farms. And it breaks my heart. I want to commend you guys for the Dream Academy. She does not attend it, but we already have our group. I think it's brilliant. I think it's the future of education. Riverview, we can see, is wildly successful. The public school model, just as times have changed, we don't have VHS tapes and cassette tapes in schools anymore. We have more technologies, but we're still using the same outdated business model in many of the schools. And parents are waking up and leaving. There's a reason so many people are leaving for these charter schools and homeschool programs, because the business model we are teaching kids is outdated. We all know how kids learn best, and we're doing the exact opposite in these classrooms. I understand there's a financial crisis right now. The cost of everything is exorbitant. But not every district is facing this crisis. And if you look at the districts that are thriving, or the schools that are thriving, it's because they've changed their business model. They're not spending a small fortune with private industry and contractors building buildings. They're changing how they teach. And parents are coming to these schools in droves. You want to be bursting at the seams with people choicing into this district. Teachers beating down the doors to come work here. You've got to change the business model. Dream Academy is brilliant. I love it. I hope it's bursting at the seams within a couple of years as the word gets out. But how do you take that model and put it into Lakeside Farms or Winter Gardens for the families that don't have the freedom to homeschool their kids? Because right now, so I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. But you're gonna send an email as well?
I'm gonna send an email, yeah, but the
Great.
general idea is, we don't need this, we need to change gears. We're rearranging the deck chairs of the Titanic with this whole situation. This is not gonna fix anything. And I appreciate that you're throwing scary words like lead in pipes and asbestos and rotting buildings. All of that can be solved very quickly by changing this business model. You're gonna have kids beating down the doors, you're gonna be able to apply for so many grants out there. That'll help solve a lot of those problems.
In all due respect, ma'am, money is not an easy solution. That is, and there isn't money out there to
Fully
solve
aware.
these problems.
Business owner, I get it.
Thank you, by the way. In the back, yes.
Carrie Butsky, I just have a question. When you talk about revenue, you say salary a lot. Do you 100% know that we can use these funds for salary, or do they have to 100% go back to infrastructure?
They can be, you can either free up existing funds that you're using for maintenance and supplant them with these monies, or you can use these monies directly. But the answer is yes, you can. Use them for general fund purposes and for maintenance of facilities.
So unlike a general obligation bond that would be passed, which can only go to capital improvements, this can be used for other, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So we still have bonds to get revenue?
You cannot, general obligation bonds can only be used for infrastructure.
No, not general. I'm saying if we need to get more revenue to the schools.
You cannot, you cannot sell bonds to generate revenue. Bonds, I don't know what I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying the normal tax ways of getting money into the school system aren't broken totally.
Yes, I agree, but that's what this is trying to separate, because you're in total control of revenue from the state. The goal of this is to find revenue that you would have total control of here. Whether the way to get that is something that the citizens and the board want to do is what this discussion is.
I appreciate the innovative look at it. I appreciate that too. I'm glad you guys are doing this. However, I'm with this woman over here. I think it'd be tying her hands. And I don't, maybe it's not opinion time. It's not opinion time, but I just want to say that. I just want to make sure I put that out there.
I think that if you, depending on what the board does, it could do something to tie your hands. If it's not done properly and if it's not handled properly. You're right.
Okay, I've got you, sir, but let me just make a statement. So we're approaching 9:30. I think the schedule was from 8 to 9:30. I believe Andrew and Laura, I don't know if you said to me, but I'm gonna. Andrew spoke for you, that you guys are willing to keep on going, okay?
I'm definitely.
Now, we understand some staff may have some meetings they need to go to, but because it's not an official board meeting, they're free to do that. Except for you, Lisa, you got capture all of this. Okay. So yes, sir. And then I got Ron. I got you after that.
Question on the comments. Has a budget been passed for this process? I realize $25,000 has been spent, but as you move forward doing this, there's going to be additional dollars spent. Is there a budget that's set aside for this?
I would just say no, and not this time. This is kind of what this is about. Like if we choose as a policy decision, I was going to close with some of these comments, so I want to make sure we get everywhere. But if we want to move forward with anything, then yeah, we're going to have to look at, well, one, what is it? What policy decision are we making to say, if we say, look, there's a dog park opportunity that the community wants to pursue, what is that even going to look like? And then we have to cost it out. So none of those decisions have been made, and that's kind of why we're doing this, and we're going to do more. Because if people don't want to do anything, then we're going to have to consider that too. But that's why we're kind of here, is to flesh this all out. So that's why I'm glad everybody's here. So I'm
There's nothing included in your current budget to do anything.
And
No.
my comment to this whole process, and I realize there's a lot of debating and questions moving forward, but I think it'd be something to keep in mind moving forward in the process, that the meetings be held at a time that's more conducive to the community. Because with the community behind you, you're going to be able to get something done if everybody agrees. And if you don't have the community behind you, it's going to be a fight. And when you have it at 8 o'clock on a Thursday morning, there's people here that are obviously missing work, but there's a lot of people that can't wait for the meeting.
I agree with you. That's why there's going to be more and more opportunities for this. So agree completely. This is a first step so that your comment is well taken. At every public meeting that ever happens, a time doesn't work for someone, right? 6 p.m. works for some people, 8 a.m. works for others, 12 noon works for some people. So my perspective is, let's have numerous opportunities so everyone can be here. Someone's not going to be happy about the timing at every meeting, but at least we can say, we had some people here this morning, we'll have people at the next one, and we'll have people at another one. So my view is, the more the merrier, but point well taken. Thank you, sir.
And sir, for the notes, do you mind stating your name?
Next time.
You got it? Okay. Hey.
Ron Cook.
Ron Cook, how are you?
Fantastic, good to see you, Barry. I know you have extensive experience in San Diego Unified, Mr. Bennett, and do you see the difference between San Diego Unified, which doesn't care about its community at all? Nope. They are a nation unto themselves, and aren't concerned about what the impact they have on their community. Do you see that we are different? That this is, any decisions we make here as a district, this is our hometown.
Every community is different. Like I said, every school neighborhood is different. I understand that. And in all frankness, as someone who served on the Unified Board, had 45 schools just in my sub-district, I cared about every school, every neighborhood, and every parent's concerned. And I think the key is every neighborhood is different, which is why this input of knowing how the culture, the community, the climate, the traffic, the student body, I understand is different. All I'm saying is the process, to point out the process, legal process, how it was utilized and under state law and can be applied, but it has to meet the Lakeside way. And that's for the board to determine what that is. That's not for me to determine.
And Scott, maybe, those of us who have been in East County a long time, have a certain view of San Diego. But, obviously this is a state law opportunity. So if there's other school districts around the state that have, you might maybe find some examples. And I'm not saying we can even compare those to Lakeside, but there may be some smaller districts around the state that we can go to say, how did it go for you?
They didn't, this is a part of law that's been law for decades and has sadly not been utilized because of the opportunity for districts. To be honest, the amount of money and what Unified got out of this is dust. The impact to a small district in revenues would not be dust. It could be significant, and but I understand this is you to determine, decide.
The impact on the fabric of our hometown.
Exactly.
That also is impacted, I want to make sure it's considered. And then the other thing is the no words frighten me more than that's money the state of California can't touch.
Right.
I got the state of California. I will never trust that. So, thank you.
Yes.
In talking about the meetings, perhaps I was looking at the wrong place, so I didn't see this one on the calendar, so future ones can we have on the calendar so the community is aware?
I think I want to address that point, if I may. So this meeting we had invited, community leaders to attend and invite others. And then there was a lot of, public posting. And so on Facebook, I'm just going to throw that out there for everyone, that we need to make sure that, no, I understand, thank you. One of the things that I want to encourage everyone to know is the intention of this first meeting was to have a bunch of community leaders come together to give their wish list. And then as there was more and more public input, I had to make the decision of, well, are we going to cancel it? Well, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be here, and then we're going to create new opportunities for people who couldn't be here to come again. So there was a lot of communication that went into this, and then, interest, which is good, and I didn't want to cancel it. And so, I understand that, 8 a.m. is hard, but there was a lot of, we sent invites to, a lot of community stakeholders, and there was a lot of interest. And so, moving forward, I didn't want to cancel it. So that was the decision that I wanted to make sure everybody had access. So
can we have it on the because I personally don't have social media, so I had to find out.
Oh, yeah, and moving forward, we can absolutely do it on the website. The intent of this original meeting was an ad hoc committee meeting, and then, I didn't want to cancel it, and so as a result, there was some things lost in translation, but we'll make sure moving forward that, yeah, it's on the website, you can see it. And by the way, there's a November board meeting you can come to, there'll be another board meeting, moving forward that you guys can come to as well, and that's publicly noticed as well. So, absolutely, that's the name of the game, is making sure everybody knows what's going on.
But if you put your email on a card, we will make sure that everyone knows on this process, you're directly notified, which the district's not required to do on their general meeting. So if you want to directly get any specific information, materials back up, or know when there's meetings, that's a separate way of being notified.
I'll do, like I said, if this meeting specifically, I feel like it wasn't on the website, it blew up on social media, and that's how things spiral. And I think that if we're saying we want community input, it needs to be readily available for the community to see that it's a meeting that's happening, because I would have never known had it not started through the word of mouth through people on social media.
Billy, did you ever hand up or?
I'm sorry, are meeting minutes, meeting notes included in those emails?
What?
Your email, like the meeting notes that are being documented now?
Well, we are going to send every comment today to the school board, which will be in the public document for their next meeting. If you want to receive copies of those directly, once they're public, we'll send those to you directly as well, or whatever, if you like. But we need to fill out a card and let us know that.
I was just saying, are we not community stakeholders?
You are. The whole process, so just so you understand, I'm happy to explain some of this process. So the first time the board looked at talking about this was in April, and that's a publicly noticed meeting. Then again in September, where there was an ad hoc committee of community stakeholders from the chamber, from principals to PTA leaders to others, that we would invite to come to an ad hoc committee meeting. That information was shared, which is fine, and that's why I chose not to cancel it. So you're all stakeholders, and that's why PTA leaders probably could have invited you. Maybe the chamber invited you, maybe a principal invited you. That's just fine. In a process like this, you can't possibly touch everybody who's interested. So you have to crowdsource. That's what this was. And so while there's improvements to be made moving forward in process, I would agree. We have a great first meeting. So, I think that's where we are. That's my perspective for you.
In the back.
Do you guys have something that shows how many classrooms are in each site and also how many classrooms are actually being used as classrooms?
So in case not everyone heard it, we looked at the sites. The question is how many classrooms are in each one of those school sites and how many of those classrooms are actually being used as classrooms?
There was a facilities master plan done by the district several years ago. If the district decides to go ahead with this, or otherwise it probably needs to be updated which would include not only classrooms used, but the condition and so forth. But the answer to your question is today, we don't have that data readily available, or is it what we have? And maybe Todd has that available, so you might ask him as the facilities director whether he has that. But that would be part of, if the board wants to go ahead, you need to know what you have, what you're using, what you're not using, what condition it's in, whether it can be upgraded or whether it can be torn down. You have bungalows, portables, whether you want to continue to use those, get rid of those, etc. So.
Yeah, I think that was very pertinent, like,
Thank you.
as far as enrollment, amount of kids at the campus and how many classrooms are actually being used as the classrooms.
Yeah, the enrollment on each site we have general enrollment, but we do not have that data that you're asking for readily available. It will need to be prepared if the process goes forward. It's possible Todd and his department has the answer to your question right now. I do not know whether you have that or not.
Todd, did you want to?
I have the information.
You do have.
We can get it to you. We can get it. Okay. Just write that down.
I'm sure the school district knows how many classrooms are on each site and how many of those classrooms are being used. I'm sure. Okay, great, okay. Right behind you, Bert.
Well, I see a lot of underutilized assets in these aerial pictures, and I understand the intent of trying to marry private enterprise with public entities. And I do commend that because it's a great idea. The important thing is each little neighborhood is going to be independent as far as its needs. So the nut of this project is to make the right fit. You know, what you're going to put in, but if you're going to take a, you know, there's a lot of land on these properties that are not used. It's just, but that's what I think you guys are going for, is to make that fit without damaging neighborhoods, raising revenue for the schools, having opportunities if the population headcount of the children grow, that you can grow the programs into some of these resources without losing your assets. And I see that, but that's a big match. So if that's where you're heading, that might be the future where education-wise, it's got to be tied with private enterprise too, because you're right, funding is just not there. So.
Right here.
To answer that other lady's question, the monthly enrollment report broken down by schools on the school board agenda on the documents, background documents every month on the website.
Excellent. Great. Right
I
here.
just wanted to address the underutilized space that is a dog park at Euclid Hill School. Every afternoon and every weekend, that field is full of kids playing soccer. So that field is not just a dog park and not underutilized. It is absolutely utilized every day.
I didn't say it was underutilized, I said it was a de facto dog park.
Right.
Which means, and kids are playing soccer in the same area that dogs are doing what dogs do. And that there's health and safety issues regarding that, and the question is whether that's acceptable to parents and the district, or whether you want to change it or not, because you have liability without control. And that's up to you to determine. Unfortunately, that's common in every school district where dogs use fields, and then on the weekends or other day after schools, kids use those same fields, and it raises safe and healthy issues.
But it's not a de facto dog park, it's like Lakeside Farm.
When I say
When
I say de facto, it's not a legal, it's not a legal dog park, but it's a school property that is used by for non-school purposes as a dog park. And
Literally every
others-
field after school hours has dogs running out of TDS, Lakeside Farm, you're gonna see dogs on all of them. The lady in that one specifically is a dog park, kind of like, not really, it's a soccer field.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all-
No, point well taken. I'll come back over to you. Yeah.
Kind of piggybacking on that, she's right, a lot of these schools, the local, like AYSO, baseball, they use these fields. Do we charge them, or do we just let the community use them? We charge them?
We have a use of facility through Facilitron. They pay for the facilities.
But it does not cover
Right,
maintenance costs, water costs.
Yeah, I'm sure it's minimal, I was
and
just
all that
curious
stuff.
if that's something we give back to the community, is
Yeah.
we're supporting our kids, because most of them go to our schools, or if we actually charge these organizations.
Yes, we do.
Going back to Lucas Hill. So I can state that my son was complaining how other, finding dog poo in the field. Can we put signs up, like, stating that, you're gonna be charged, just to scare the community, hey, you don't pick up your dog poo, that's not fine.
Broken blocks.
I mean,
It's been addressed.
I don't know,
It's been addressed.
I don't know, it's just, they step on it, and that's gross,
That's great feedback.
I don't think it's within Scott's purview.
No, that's great. I will tell you this, that's great feedback. This is a long-standing discussion among the community. I'm happy to have afterwards with you all, because it's been a long-standing discussion. So, well taken,
But I
thank you.
will say, at Washington Elementary, that's why I was able to get that solved. We had one school out of dozens and dozens of the same situation, kids playing dog poo. At that school, no longer do kids and dogs play in the same space, and that was paid for by the private sector, nonprofit, and the district. So that's why the key is, are there innovative and creative ways to solve problems? That's the question. And I believe there are, but ultimately it has to work for the community, and the board has to decide. because that is not acceptable. I get it.
It's not, because
Thank
We
you.
have dog parks.
Thank you. Yeah, so some of these things can be, hopefully, like we talked in the past at dog parks, maybe the county could help us out with that stuff too. So what I'd like to bring up though is that these are really parks too. These open areas aren't bad. You know, kids need open areas to play. And sometimes Eucalyptus Hills for one, other areas, there's ballpark fields and everything else. It's okay to have an open space. You don't have to look at it as a dollar sign. I mean, these are parks for some of the areas. Eucalyptus Hills is the only place for the kids to play up there, with a big open area to play football or to soccer, baseball. So these aren't just, you know, areas to develop. These are schools that have been given to this district to be good stewards and to have those parks available. Some of it's been donated over the years, some of these properties. So please keep them within the schools and develop somewhere else. And we'll be creative and we'll be able to fund our schools. We'll figure out a way.
That's great, and I would love if you can send me specific suggestions that I can pass on the school board, how to help fund these things that I'm not aware of. Because my goal, if I can give those suggestions to them, I would really be great to pass them on.
I'll leave my information.
we need donations, really.
Yes, right here. Hey, can we get your name?
My name is Brianna Barkowski. I noticed in the dog park picture that it looks like there's a giant field next to where you guys put the dog park. Would it be a possibility to section off a piece of the land for the dog park and keep some of the land for the kids?
That's something that we did at Washington Elementary, exactly, and that's an option, once again, if that's what the board wants to do. And the question is, how do you pay for it and maintain it? Absolutely.
Steve?
Just a comment, I'm on the Lakeside Water Board, we have a property just to the north of us, and for a lot of districts, whether it's water district or other districts, we've been leasing the property out to the north of us, we own it, we have wells on it, we have access to it, we're getting $12,000 a month from that. That goes directly back in the general fund that helps pay for keep people's water rates low. We've got multiple tank sites with cell towers on them, money goes right back in the district and helps pay for it. You know, I think I don't know if this has been mentioned, but I think the perspective is, I don't know if this is part of it, but what you guys are proposing is also how to not get straddled with school bonds and find other creative ways of funding, because the last school bond that was floated around a couple years ago, I think 2020, that would have added about $300 a year on my property taxes for 30 years. And I don't think people understand that. People will lean towards this for the kids, that for the kids, we need more money for this, we need more money for that. But the bottom line is, I think this whole exercise, if it's the way I understand it is, how can we fund things creatively without strapping, because we have stacked bonds that are on our property taxes that we're still 15, 20 years into. And every time you put a bond on it, I don't know if everyone knows this, it goes right to your property taxes, and that would have added $300 times 30 years for us for a school that I don't have any kids that I have no use for. So there's other ways to look at the same thing with a different format for funding.
Thanks. I saw you again.
Well, mine was, I guess, in combination of all of this, is that are there other programs being looked at, like that are supported by maybe the county instead of private individuals or businesses? Because all these private individuals and businesses are gonna make a lot of money off this also. Whereas if it goes more towards a public space or a county-run park, it benefits the community, but that property is also maintained by the county at that point, or another organization that's not out to make a ton of money off of this.
There are other governments should do this. In my 40 years experience, when money runs short, the first thing government agencies do is cut pools, maintenance of parks and those facilities, and that's what will happen. The county, for the first time in 30 years, has a structural deficit.
But you have the 99-year lease, right?
Yeah, so the key, my view is, can you find others to pay maintenance costs that will be recession-proof also? We all agree the county and other agencies should do other things, and that would be great. And there's a lot of ways to supply public services. The question is this district getting the services it wants and needs for its kids, or not? And if not, how do you do that?
I just want to comment on that. You are validating a point that I have made on numerous occasions. I've talked with Todd about this about 80,000 times. You know, the community planning group has, and the planning area has PLDO funding, Parkland Dedication Ordinance funding that, you know, joint occupancy with the county, all these. I would love to consider all of these options, and that's why we're having this conversation, is for points like that where, you know, what could that look like that helps our kids, helps the district, helps the community? Because I can tell you, as a community leader, I've been to so many community planning group meetings where I've heard people say, we want this, we want that, this is what I want to see. And I'm going, well, great, joint occupancy, that could work too, right? So that's a great comment, and that's why we're looking at this, and why we should consider all options, because innovative ideas are relevant and important. So thank you for that.
Similar to that question, there's a lot of grants right now for housing, for coming from the state, coming from the county. Has it been considered that the district itself builds and keeps and runs its own property and creates a department to run that property versus leasing it to another entity to do it?
We have, in one of the documents here, it talks about various forms of legislation about housing on school properties. And that is one of the things we're looking at. There are other ways to fund housing, if that's what you want, besides joint occupancy process. You can pass a school bond. You can build housing in school bond, which raises taxes. But generally, the need and desire is greater than the dollars available. But there's certainly, that is another option of, we are looking at legislation and financial opportunities where there could be funding available, but it would still have to be either, there's not sufficient state grants, if you will, or to do it. Basically, there would still have to be a market element. It might be affordable housing, meaning not market-based, but once again, it's a very complex piece, and that's one thing we're looking at. But once again, is that what you all want as your primary use of the property or not? That's for this board to decide. And if it does, we will present all sorts of options for the board to pursue.
Yes?
Quick question. If I stand corrected, ultimately the state owns these properties, correct?
The state?
Yeah.
No, the district, the school, Lakeside owns its properties. It's an agency. The school districts are created by the state versus differently than municipalities, but it's owned by the school district.
Who's to say that if we end up building something that produces some significant revenue, that they wouldn't raise them or take that away from us and take over that revenue?
Well,
Are there safety guidelines for that?
Well,
Because they could come in and just be like, oh, they're making too much money.
well, the Constitution would probably have to change to how the ownership of school district sites. In theory, the Constitution of the state of California could change and do a lot of things.
Well, I don't think it has to do
This state can come in and condemn your property tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Your personal property.
Absolutely.
And have to pay you for it.
Absolutely.
So the government has a lot of power in certain circumstances, if it wants to use it. So I don't.
But ultimately, Scott, what she's asking is, these are not owned by the state. They're owned by the Lakeside Union School District. And so the state doesn't have the kind of authority you're talking about without a lot of changes to law and maybe even changes to the Constitution to say, okay, I mean, yes, cities over the years have been, some of their resources have been tapped. That was money coming through the state already, in which the state was saying, okay, we're not going to give you as much. This is different because it's locally generated. So you do have some more safeguards than what you're talking about, just the state coming in and saying, okay, we're gonna condemn all these properties and take all these school districts and take all your revenue. That would be a pretty severe and litigated process, and I'm saying that's not gonna happen. And that's my opinion. Okay. Other questions? Other comments, other input, other suggestions? Yes?
What kind of liability, no matter what, if anything gets decided to happen, like whatever, housing or pool or dog park or whatever, what type of liability does the district have to relinquish to incidents or anything that could happen in that space? Does it fall solely onto the developer? Could it fall onto the district?
Well, for instance, mentioned the Boys and Girls Club earlier. If someone in the Boys and Girls Club trips and falls, they're gonna sue the school district. Now, I don't know what the agreement is, whether the Boys and Girls Club had to put up a insurance liability and so forth, they're still gonna sue the school district. The bottom line is ultimately you have to have contractual protections for the district, and that's where there's insurance, there's bondings, and so forth, to protect them, plus legal representation paid for not by the district, but by the third party. The Boys and Girls Club can't afford to do any of that. So in that case, you're probably less protected than you are with someone who actually has deep pockets that the district would require to cover those costs. But look, in our society, people sue, and they sue everybody, and they sue government, unfortunately, for anything. If tomorrow someone falls on a district property, that parent can sue the school district, they probably do, and then the district lawyers have to defend it, and someone will determine what they have to pay. And that happens all the time in public agencies, unfortunately. So, but in these cases, you're developing specific legal contracts that have the highest protections for the district with legal costs paid for by the third party. That's the intent.
Where does that cost land to then?
That's-
Thank you.
Is anybody on the board considering possibly putting apartments on any of the properties to create revenue? Anybody on the board?
I'm happy to just kind of address it. I don't think so. We kind of wanted to have this whole process first and kind of go through and see what people want to see from in the community, right? I mean,
Well, I don't think anybody wants to see that, but that's why it's asking.
Yeah, I mean, people, look,
The board, is anybody on the board considering that as an option?
I think the key thing is that because other districts did it, doesn't mean we should. And so my view is that, you know, we have to lakeside some of these things. And I was going to say that in my closing comments. So, you know, there's lots of ideas out there, but that's kind of what we want to hear. So that's where I'm at. I mean, I don't know what you all want.
You heard the question. I was actually asking a direct question. Is anybody on the board, is anybody on the board open to that?
At this time, I'm not considering that.
Not considering. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, again, please, leave Dream Academy at your kids' Because I just want to stress again, my kids' education, their reading levels, math have increased dramatically. They have improved so much. And I want to thank Dr. Taylor for creating Dream Academy and Mrs. Dexheimer for, I can't thank them enough, you know. So please do not do anything with Dream Academy. Leave it as is at Eucalyptus Hills, okay? Please. Thank you.
We've captured that comment. Yes.
I'm gonna
great.
second it and also encourage the schools to say, hey, what's working here? Let's adopt this into the other schools.
I third it too. I think that after COVID, a lot of people have been looking for different alternatives. And I think the Dream Academy has provided some type of alternative to a traditional school. And I would hope that the numbers of enrollment would increase with that. And I'm sure you've seen an increase over the past 3 years that it's developed.
Excellent. Anyone else? If anybody's been too shy, but you really want to get a comment in, you can still write it. You can write that comment. Please include your name and your contact information, your email address, if you want to be included on future communications about this specific process, as the board may or may not consider what happens going forward. Billy.
I know I have a lot of people on Facebook that are watching the meeting right now. How can they reach out with their comments? Can they just email to the school district?
Yeah, well, I'm collecting all specific comments on this process, and we're gonna send the school board and school district. I'm trying to not have to add burden to staff to then have to do that. Obviously, you can email your elected officials and your public officials anytime, but on this specific process, anything I get, comments, suggestions, opposition, ideas, we will include to send on to the school district.
So the question is, someone who's on Facebook right now, we're live on Facebook, everyone's smiling.
Look at you mean.
No, I don't know, Billy, are we live on Facebook right now? We're live. Okay, perfect. You know, I would have put more makeup on, I'm sorry. Anybody who's watching that process, who would like to weigh in somehow, get more information, is there a specific email address?
Yeah, put my email on
there. Okay.
Yeah, put it in the, put my email on there, and I'd be happy to respond to either questions or pass on comments.
Great, thanks.
Where's your email?
It's on the agenda. It's on the bottom of the timeline, second page of the handout. It's on here. Or if you
So Billy,
give us your email.
Are you gonna type it in your comments for them to see?
I can't later, but I just need to figure out what the address is.
Scott Barnett Consulting at gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you.
For your Facebook listeners, it's scottbarnettconsulting@gmail.com. Other comments?
Eat donuts.
Okay, hey, thank you. I'm gonna ask Laura and Andrew if they've got any closing comments. Thank you for your participation today. We went over, but I think there was interest. So this is great. I think it's been a great process, an initial process to determine, you know, what happens going forward. So Laura and Andrew?
Yeah, well, I want to thank you all for being here, and thank you for, you know, listening and asking questions, sharing your ideas, sharing your thoughts. Just so you kind of all know, you know, as school districts, we're always looking at ways to try to improve programs for kids and renovate them, right? Make them better. And one of the things I mentioned in my opening was money is always the issue. So whether we want to enhance a curriculum, whether it be that we want to enhance an entire program, drawing students for enrollment, drawing students for a career program, whatever it may be that the district wants to pursue, hiring more teachers to implement these new programs, whatever it may be, it always comes down to resources. It's always a resource issue, every time. And so my perspective is, I'm not here to just say, well, money's always an issue and there's nothing we're going to do about it. That's not why I'm here. And I sit here because I want to try to find creative, innovative solutions to solve problems. I don't want to be a potted plant. That's not what I'm about. And I've never been that way. And anybody who knows me knows that. So my perspective is, how can we move the ball in a way that partners with the community to find solutions and gets things for kids that you all want to see for the public schools in Lakeside? That's what it's about for me. There's other districts who've done things, but it's not Lakeside. And I said this from the beginning. We've got to Lakeside it. And if it's going to be, you know, just a small little, you know, pool or whatever it could be, let's look at it. You know, looking at ideas doesn't harm anybody. And I think that that's why we're here. And that's why you all showed up. So I'm glad you're here. I hope you continue to share thoughts and feedback. And I just want to share as well, you know, my cell phone is public. It's on the website, and I actually answer my cell phone, believe it or not. So if you call me, I want to talk to you. What I want to encourage you all to do is ask the questions. But please don't say that, oh, there's been a policy decision. As you've heard this morning, there have been no policy decisions made by the board or anybody at this point. It's about saying, what do you all want to hear? What do you all want to see for the public schools here? I was born and raised in Lakeside. I went to Lakeside schools, and I know that when you talk about great ideas, it creates concern because they're going, oh, it's going to change stuff. Some of the stuff that I see, I'm going, I don't know if that works. Some of our sites don't fit for anything. All the ideas you guys brought are extremely valid and important to me. And so, you know, I was born and raised here, and I love it, and I'm not leaving. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that the needs of the district are great, not just for facilities. Facilities needs, in our last maintenance plan, I just want to share with you, the needs are $110 million. That's more than we could even bond out over 4 new tax increase bond measures. So I just want to share with everyone that we really need to look at opportunities and being innovative. And if we want to do a career program, or we want to do a veterinary program, or we want to do something that draws people, or we want to enhance dreams programs, we need resources to do those things that we don't already have. And that's what I'm trying to look at here, and that's what I'm trying to encourage the community to give us feedback on. And yeah, there were details along the way that, yes, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, we're gonna do more. Yes, everyone is a stakeholder. In my mind, everyone who showed up here is part of the committee, so please send in your emails so that you're a part of the committee. So the deal is, let's make consensus decisions that are helpful to the district and our kids. And that's what it's about. So that's what I want to close with. I'm going to be here. I want to talk to you all. Declining enrollment is always an issue. It's an issue for us, and we need to make sure that we're always looking at ways to bring kids in. When we do that, we get more resources while we also have an impact. And that's what I want to see. So that's why we're here. And I appreciate you all coming. And I'll let Laura close.
You. I guess I should turn on my, Andrew hit on most of it. Really for me, the process is just to look and see, what do we want to do? What do we want to grow? I'm not, it's a long process that's going to have, I'm excited to do some committee work on it, to do some more, town hall meetings on it, to get the rest of the board, once we have an idea, if there's something that we want to move forward on. I don't know if there is. That's what this whole process is for, and for us to take a look at, because we don't want to become stagnant. We have amazing programs here. It's why I moved into the district. My kids could go to school here, and it's what I want to see us continue to offer for many years to come. So that's, through this process, is how we continue to grow, how we continue to learn, because we don't want to grow stagnant. We want to still continue to be great. We have great programs that we want to keep and continue to grow.
Thank you. Okay, with that said, unless there's anything from the superintendent. Thank you everyone for coming, and I'm sure there'll be a few of us. Scott will be here. If there's any other questions you may want to ask him, feel free to come.
I'm sure exactly. So I just want to know if I can make you here for a quick second. So I get to see all of the projects that we have. I was thinking about if there's a lot of sponsored programs.